Hello, this is a presentation of my final Node and React project for Code the Dream class. This is Van's live project that I got from Scrimba. I was eager to learn more about React Router. Unfortunately, their class was outdated, so I decided to build the same application using features from the most recent React Router version 6.4 and build a server for it. I haven't used anything from Scrimba besides that, so some of my decisions may be questionable. There are multiple ways to achieve the same goal present. While it hurts consistency, now I have a clearer understanding of differences and know when to implement different approaches. Let me show the functionality of the website first, and then I will get into a technical explanation. Design is built for a small screen. This way it looks weird. The design looks weird on a large screen. Here is how it's supposed to look. I am going to just click on the button so you will see how everything is working here. Okay, let's dig into it. Homepage is just a introduction page that only has a footer and header and a link to the Van's endpoint. Here is how it looks. Here you can see one way of redirecting to a different page using React Router's form submission and redirecting by a special React Router function action. It is fired when you want to send a fetch request. After submitting the form, the request is first going through or being intercepted by an action function which was added to your route in the browser router. There will be more examples after. For now, we just note that there is a possibility to do something with your requests and redirect to somewhere using browser router. About page. Notice that header and footer are not present on this page. It's done by design for educational purposes. See, when making your router, you can display multiple components by displaying by nesting other React components in parents' children array. Let's check it out. I do have an app and about siblings router that are displayed independently from each other. If about is placed in app's children array, let's just move it up a little bit. Right over here. Check it out. Here is where your header and footer. I don't want it for now. Let it be here. And here is how app component looks like. It has a navbar component that takes an array of titles of routes and their endpoints, labels, and paths. I was exploring React's reusability feature here. Navbar is using a different React router component called navlink. As opposed to regular link, navlink is used to pass an active state of links that can be described in CSS later. It looks like I've forgotten to implement those rules, yet the main idea is to have the word on the screen to be outlined somehow when user is on a certain route. About page is using link to redirect to Van's endpoint. Under the hood, the link component is the anchor HTML element. It is the most efficient way of redirecting. Van's route is more interesting. There is a list of vans and filters that can be applied. Simple, luxury, rugged, and clear filters. State management in this scenario is done using a query in URL. That can be handy when you want to share your link with your friend with vans already sorted. Vans is the oldest and most complex component and has gotten through multiple iterations that will be explained after. Here is what it looks like. Over here, the concept of a loader is first introduced. Loader is a function like action that happens before component mounts. So the app does all necessary fetching and computation for a particular component before and renders it after. Filtering here is done wastefully. It must be done under certain conditions, maybe even in loader when fetching, depending on size of a list. It is left here this way because it's easy to understand what it does. As you may see, it's rather simple, just adding a query to URL so your separate loader function has access to its variables. For simplicity, vans only use grid components and option buttons bar component. Options button bar categories are hard-coded directly in the component. I disagree with this decision. For reusability purposes, it shall be passed in props or stored in state manager. Options button bar has active type property, which will be added to class name. Since React is re-rendering the whole thing when useEffect is triggered, the useEffect is watching search params I like how variable type is responsible for both functionality and CSS. We go to luxury. Luxury is class name is added right here directly from this link, and the browser paints it appropriately. Everything else is your standard event handlers. Grid component uses this neat children props feature that is here mainly for reusability. It also has this already familiar React router component navlink that redirects to a particular van details. We will first go check out the router setup. Here you can see how dynamic endpoints are created. There is another loader here. As you can see, the event description component has its own loader. For this functionality, it's redundant, but if you had more information to display and used something like GraphQL, Van's router would fetch and display only a short preview, while Van description would load much more data for certain van. This component is used somewhere else and pretty complex. I will explain its functionality later. You can also go back to already sorted or filtered list by clicking option here per se if you want to see similar vans already sorted. And you may know what's going to happen here. The same interaction. Everything is painted and displayed correctly. This van button is a form. That does nothing. Here is our error page. There is a typo to make this pop when submitting the form. Your header and footer is still displayed, and the application does not crash. Thanks for the router error boundary element. That is descendant to main app component. Here it is. This is your error catcher. It will happen again, I promise. Check out another way of redirecting called navigate. Navigate is your way to look into a history stack. In other words, it has access to where you clicked before. Navigate -1 is React router's neat feature to tell the browser to go one step back. I do believe that other navigation features have -1 too. Okay. Now we go to authorization part that will be explained in conjunction with Express. Originally, this project was not meant to use a custom API server, so I used Airtable to store and fetch my data. It was a pain not to have real user IDs and standard database features, but it was workable. Here is some of my controllers to use Airtable. Check out this transform data for graph abomination. I will have to look up for it. Yeah, there it is. Transform data. This is what I had to do to massage data to a proper shape for a graph. That took me some time. Looking back, it was a bold decision for me to create a server for this project. Nevertheless, let's log out. Logout route has no component, only a loader, because there is nothing to display. Which is basically taking care of your cookies and redirecting you to main page. Homepage. Auth route, which is a sibling of vans and van description and host. Index true in a router indicates that the element will be displayed when auth endpoint is hit. And here we can see already familiar setup. Component and the action. Login and register components look similar. They're pretty much the same. I just thought it's better to keep them apart for reusing purposes. Oh, no. I just thought it's better to keep them apart than reusing one. I will want to add some extra fields to the register to register someone. Let's register new user. There is a small error line found if the fields are empty. This is the simple data validation that can be done on the browser side. Let me find a register. Okay, here we go. And here it is. I am trying to submit a form, and the action is returning an error. The component is catching the error and then displaying it. When registered, you see empty profile, because there is no data yet. Let's register someone. Saitama. One punch. Man at one punch at Gman. Oh. .com. Passwords, secret. Okay. I will add a van for him as well. One punch man van image dot JPEG image. Let's see this picture right here. I am going to fetch it and one punch van price enormous. Be careful with this one, and the image URL is right here, and it's say simple. We submit it, and here's our van, and it's also displayed in Vans Grid right here. Cool. Let's log out. If I try to log in with a non-existent user or invalid credential, what was it? One, it doesn't matter. Let's say one punch, secret. Here's what happens. This message, wrong user or password, is coming all the way from a server and is displayed on the screen for a one unauthorized. Login browser controller hits a certain endpoint on server. Here is it. Here it is. And here is the other one, the server one. This message, okay, login browser controller hits a certain endpoint on the server. Login endpoint over here has its own login server controller. If database cannot find a user, it's throwing an error that is caught and rethrown by Axios and gets automatically displayed by element described before, error element. Over here, you can see that it catches the error and throws the error back again, which will be caught over here. To display that, I will just need to change one line here. Not change, but you will see that the message is coming all the way from database when you're trying to do something like that. One punch and secret. You see wrong user password, one punch. This is it. That's quite interesting. I like how it works. But I don't like how it's showing on a different page rather than have the error to be displayed on the login page. But I already have a clear idea of how to implement it. I've done the same earlier. Maybe in future I will revamp it. So let's log an existing user in. Everything that you can see here is dynamically computed based on mock data in database. Per se, the number of reviews, the income per month and stuff. The server is creating two cookies. One session cookie and one access token cookie. Session has an expiration date. Access token has a JWT token in it and also expiration date. Create JWT and compare password are a custom methods on a user mongoose model. They do user password comparison and validation. If everything is okay, user data is added to request session. Here it is. If I want to use it somewhere, and now it can be accessed via express request argument. Technically, I don't need to send back any sensitive information from this point, at this point, but I wanted to know more about cookies and send custom access cookie. Custom access token cookie. HTTP only makes sure Interesting. Okay. It's an auth? Under auth? Oh yeah, there it is. HTTP only property makes sure that there will be no access on browser side to that cookie, meaning that access token will be undefined when trying to get it via JavaScript, even though it will be displayed in your dev tools. Same site makes sure that the client and server communication will only be possible between original sender and server. If one intercepts a cookie on its way back to the client, the other browser will receive an error. This is authorization middleware. That decrypts your token and adds user info to request as well. I know it's redundant, I just wanted to see how it all works together. Now we are done with the backend stuff, let's go back to client. Login component redirect us to auth, which bounces you to host if another dynamic endpoint with another dynamic endpoint user ID. Over here, I really should not be using user ID from my database in my URL. There is just no reason for doing that. Yet it's a setup for using Airtable from before, and it doesn't hurt, so I decided to leave it there. One more thing I missed. When user is logged, another cookie is authorized, is created. Somewhere. Auth loader is redirecting to private portion of website, otherwise it's returning nothing and rendering outlet. An outlet is a React router component that shows where the children of a certain route will be displayed. In this case, if user is logged in, you will be redirected, otherwise index page, which is a login page, is displayed. Over here. How does the browser know? It is just checking if the cookie authorized is authorized, present, or true. This is not a common approach. I really should be using use context from React for this, but I wanted to play with cookies on both browser and server side. Okay, back to dashboard panel. This is when the fun starts. Host element does the same as app element. It serves as a wrapper for its children. We had already seen a navbar component. I just reused the same one. Note I specifically said private portion rather than protected. In fact, it's rather gating than protected. There is no validation or authorization happening on browser side. It is just a redirection. Protection happens on server side. Per se, let's delete one cookie and go to income and see what happens. I am deleting this access token, or it can be an authorized, or whatever it is. I'm removing it and see that unauthorized error it pops. Let me log back in. That's funny. Oh yeah, the is authorized thing. Okay, now we go to back to the page. Our cookies are here. Again, everything here is calculated. Nothing is hard-coded. Here, there is a mock data created for different users in MongoDB. Reviews score is an average score from all reviews. This number is calculated based on the last 30 days transactions. Same trick as before. Fetching data from database and passing it to component. I love the ability to promise all for all my calls. So they will be done at the same time rather than one awaiting for the previous to resolve and only then starts. Dashboard renders summary on the screen with some of the most recent events. To complete basic CRUD operation, there is an Add Van button. Let's create another van. Pretty van. Let's do this. Way too nice. Pretty van. Okay, that looks like one. And of course it's luxury. And here it is. This form has almost no data validation. Data validation was out of scope of this project and done with the simplest input and select fields. AddVan is submitting form data when posting is created according to name. Here it is. According to name of the input. And push through after the button type submit is hit. After that, action is making an Axios request. Create van. Made a mistake? No problem. Let's edit it. This part is somehow buggy. Check out how category options are popping on weirdly in the middle of the screen, but they work. Now we are heading back to almost very beginning, because here is where Van's description component is explained. When building the app, I noticed that two components look almost the same. Take a look. So I decided to reuse the one I had already. This one right here, and this one. They share the same information. I am still debating whether or not it was a correct decision, because it added a lot of unnecessary coding. This component is confusing, but it's definitely a curious one to explore. Van description element is used in two different paths. And here it is. It looks where it is via use location hook and renders outlet with navbar conditionally. Another navbar is right here. Otherwise, it is displaying rent this van button. That's the same component. Link back to vans is done this way because -1 navigation will go to a previous history, while private vans van description component is having its own descendants. You see? That will populate the history stack. That's why I had to manually delete everything after Van's route to implement this button right here. You see? It works the same right here. Vans, go back to Vans. It's just deleting everything after it. Over here, you can see that the third way of storing and passing state is used via location, which can be accessed by any component or child on current path. By not any, but this component or its children. Van details is simply reusing, is simply looking is simply getting advanced information from current location. It's really neat way to pass data to children without refetching data. Now, submitting whatever is done on Blur using another React router hook called use submit. It is useful when another function is located when action function is located in a parent component. In our case, Ven's description. Right here. Hold up. No. Ven's details. Here it is. So the inputs will be submitted over here and be passed to update Ven controller. This is done for educational purposes. I would compose this part differently. Photos has its own loader. In case I want to expand functionality or have a library of multiple pictures for the same event. Income tab, there are some transaction information generated and stored in database. And it is displaying income dynamically. It will display only last 4 months of the year and calculate, actually not of the year. If it's say December, it will just display last 4 months and calculate the last 30 days automatically. Here are transactions based on last 30 days. Also, it can display all transactions for a certain period. In this case, month, on click on a chart bar. It is done with chart.js way get element at event. Let me see where it is. Again, there is a loader here that is passing the income to here, and then it's getting, and then it's just displaying it basically in this chart.js module way, which was pretty neat. It took me some time, but that's everything it does. Ven's tab is the same Ven snippets component from dashboard, but it's larger. Because Ven snippet list is used on dashboard, it has a Ven's props. Check it out. When going to dashboard, you will use your Ven snippet list regularly. When going to Vans, you will use the same component in the React router way. Here it is. And a loader will be activated instead of Vans props, because Vans props is never a thing in this case. And you can also see how the link to the back to Vans or the edit link must be calculated differently on different locations. Now, the most complex, in my opinion, and what took me the most time left for dessert is the reviews tab. Here, unlike on dashboard, only rating from last 30 days is displayed. The star is painted accordingly. Progress bars are filled accordingly to the numbers of reviews. Reviews numbers are calculated dynamically too. Check out the URL. Filtering and pagination is done via use search params, use effect method, probably. Here it is. Use effect is watching the params. Params are gotten through React Router hook. And it's being accessed in loader as well. Again, if you want to share the link with yourself, or it's also pagination done over here. For reviews list, I used appropriate HTML tags. This way, I don't really like myself using divs everywhere. There is a progress bar, there is a star here. Everything what you need. Pagination button group, also a curious one. But it's basically displaying or blocking a page depending on what's going on in URL. CSS is mostly done using Flexbox. I wasn't using any libraries. Everything is lined up nicely, so there is no overflow or funny margins and padding shenanigans. Everything is pretty standard here. Padding and margin are just one rem mostly. All other positioning is done by Flexbox. Server. Authentication in session is explained already, and to be honest, it is the most complicated thing. Where is it? Server, my love, my dear server, where you are. Are you here? You should be here. Yeah, here you go. Security also includes limiter, helmet, and XSS. Protected Vans router is named poorly. Sorry about that. But it's a router for protected endpoints. Here it is. Here what it looks like. Protected router. There are some custom generators to populate the database. Controllers, the interesting ones, get user income, fetching and calculating data for chart.js, get reviews is doing pagination, get average score reviews is calculating score including 30 days ago option. And that's it. I'm pretty sure there is a lot more to tell. Repo is in the description, and thanks for watching.